A political storm is building in Israel, and this time, the rage is not coming from Tehran or Gaza. It is coming from Israelis themselves. With just over 2 months to go before elections, the streets of Tel Aviv are once again filled with protesters demanding change, hundreds of them gathering on August 22nd for the weekly anti-government rally against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And one protester delivered the image of the night, dressed as Netanyahu, standing behind a window fitted with bars, beneath a sign reading, "Image of Victory." After months of war stretching from Gaza to the Iran front, that is the victory picture his own citizens chose to paint, their prime minister in a cage. And the people in that crowd are saying out loud what the costume only implies. Among them, protester Ruth Herbstein, whose argument cuts straight at the heart of Netanyahu's project, that the promise to finish the war and finish Hamas has resolved nothing, and that the only way forward is rebuilding Gaza and rebuilding trust.
I have a big problem with Netanyahu's position regarding Gaza. I think that there's no way to resolve it except to move forward and give a chance to rebuild Gaza and rebuild trust. And I think that the international involvement is very important. And I think that Netanyahu promised us that he would finish all wars and finish Hamas has shown us that is not the solution, and that will not resolve anything. We are living over here. We have to find a way to live together, and that is our main aim in the months and years to come. It's not going to be easy, but it's certainly not going to be resolved by wiping out Gaza.
The pressure on Netanyahu is piling up where it hurts most, the polls. Recent Israeli surveys show growing support for opposition parties, with former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett emerging as a major challenger, and a popular former military chief, a centrist figure, attracting significant support of his own. The message from the numbers is increasingly difficult for Netanyahu to ignore. The political battlefield is shifting under his feet, and the clock is running. Israel is scheduled to hold its next elections on October 27th. That leaves Netanyahu and his opponents with just over 2 months to convince voters. For the opposition, the goal is clear: turn public frustration into electoral change. For Netanyahu, the challenge is even bigger, holding on to power while facing pressure on the streets and growing competition at the ballot box. And as if the streets and the polls were not enough, the pressure on him no longer stops at Israel's borders. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now wanted by 2 separate judicial authorities, and the newest one comes from inside NATO itself. Turkey has issued an international arrest warrant for the Israeli leader over the armed interception of the global Sumud flotilla, the civilian ships that tried to break Israel's blockade and deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. The Istanbul 11th High Criminal Court ordered the arrest as part of a sweeping criminal case, and the charges are not minor. They include genocide, crimes against humanity, torture, aggravated looting, property destruction, hijacking vessels, and unlawfully depriving civilians of their liberty. A member of the Western Alliance has just accused a sitting Israeli prime minister of genocide in a court on paper. And to understand how heavy that is, you have to look at what actually happened on that water. The global Sumud flotilla brought together dozens of vessels and hundreds of activists from several countries, Turkey among them, carrying food, medicine, and supplies for Palestinians trapped inside Gaza. Israeli naval forces intercepted the flotilla in international waters, boarded its ships, detained its passengers, and took them to Israel before deporting them, with Turkish participants undergoing medical and psychological exams once home. Ankara's argument is blunt. This was not maritime security. It was an unlawful armed attack on a civilian humanitarian mission, and statements from activists, forensic reports, and lawyers' complaints were all folded into the Turkish investigation. This did not appear from nowhere. It has been building for the better part of a year, because the timeline shows a case gaining weight. Domestic detention warrants were first issued in November 2025 for Netanyahu and 37 other Israeli officials. By April 2026, prosecutors had completed an indictment against 35 suspects, seeking aggravated life sentences and additional prison terms that could run into the thousands of years. The names include Defense Minister Israel Katz, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, Military Chief Ayal Zamir, and the Israeli Navy commander. And now the international warrant lets Ankara pursue Netanyahu beyond its own borders and request an Interpol red notice. Israel rejects the whole case, calling it a political stunt and insisting the blockade and the interception were necessary security measures. But whatever Israel calls it, the walls of the room are moving closer. Because this Turkish case is separate from the International Criminal Court warrant already issued for Netanyahu back in November 2024 over alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. That is now 2 tracks, 2 jurisdictions, closing from different directions at once. Inside Israel, Netanyahu remains protected. He still orders military operations, still travels to friendly states. But outside that shrinking circle, every foreign visit now carries a question he cannot fully answer in advance. Will the welcoming ceremony end with an arrest? A sitting prime minister, wanted by an international court, and now by a NATO member, running a war while checking which borders are still safe to cross. And the pressure is no longer only legal, because Israel's fellow mediators in the Gaza deal are beginning to signal that their patience has a limit too.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his team are increasingly escalating policies that trample on human dignity and are acting in a way that is practically provoking the entire international community. We expect the United States to exert the necessary pressure on Israel.
The Netanyahu administration, which is committing genocide, persists in its illegal actions throughout the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, right before the eyes of the international community. The systematic policy of military occupation, forced displacement, and the seizure of land is, quite unfortunately, continuing to intensify at an alarming rate. I would like to take a moment to share some very important figures with you here today. According to the latest data from the United Nations, in the year 2024 alone, nearly 3,800 Palestinians have been forcibly displaced from their homes as a direct result of settler terrorism, systematic demolitions, and forced evictions. Nearly 100 of our dear Palestinian brothers have been brutally killed. We have discussed the nature of this situation, which constitutes a systematic and ongoing occupation, and how it deeply affects the Palestinian administration as it attempts to govern its own land. I sincerely hope that the decision to finally hold the long-awaited legislative and presidential elections in Palestine will prove to be truly beneficial for the people. That the elections This will serve to actively contribute toward the ongoing advancement of the internal reconciliation process, most especially among our dear Palestinian brothers and sisters, as well as further strengthening the overall unity and the deep-rooted solidarity shared by all of the Palestinian people. During our meeting held earlier today, we have also once again reaffirmed our unwavering solidarity against the ongoing attacks, the various violations, and the constant provocations targeting the sacred holy sites in Palestinian lands, especially the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Ibrahimi Mosque located in the city of Hebron. We are, in particular, most firmly and resolutely opposed to any provocations intended to alter the status quo at our first Qibla, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and other holy and sacred sites. We shall continue to fight with unwavering determination for the realization of a sovereign Palestinian state. My dear friends, here in Gaza, we are currently facing an Israeli administration that has made total deadlock its primary motto, despite all the previous agreements and the ongoing international efforts. Despite the remarkably constructive attitude shown by our Palestinian brothers, the current Israeli administration unfortunately continues to maintain its deeply uncompromising and aggressive stance. This process clearly demonstrates, just as I have stated on many occasions before, exactly who is in favor of continued conflict and who is genuinely striving for peace.
Turkey and our nation have emphasized the critical necessity of broadening our dialogue and fostering deeper mutual understanding among all nations within this region, as well as the immense significance of the collaborative defense pact recently finalized by Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan, which stands as a truly vital and monumental agreement. We sincerely hope this serves as a foundational starting point for a more comprehensive, far-reaching agreement that strengthens regional security and long-term stability while safeguarding the Islamic nation's vital interests. Furthermore, We have always maintained that a just and lasting peace can only be achieved by ending the occupation once and for all, and the formal establishment of a fully independent Palestinian state, with East Jerusalem serving as its capital, and that any potential integration of Israel into the wider region, if it truly so desires, must be firmly linked to the achievement of this specific goal, in full accordance with international legitimacy and the Arab Peace Initiative. I discussed with my brother, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the dangerous Israeli escalation in the West Bank and Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the State of Palestine, and the consequences of the occupation. And then there is the issue of settler terrorism. These settlers do not come alone. They are always being pushed by the Israeli army, and they are always being protected by the Israeli army. And there is the constant expansion of settlements, along with the ongoing violation of our Islamic holy sites. And Christian ones, they don't differentiate. Muslims, Christians, they're all enemies to them. And the seizure of Palestinian funds and the strangling of our national economy.